Okay, so hoping that you can hear me, you can see me, and mainly you can see my slides. Thank you for such a warm welcoming and introduction to this amazing session. My name is Bo Prushka, and I'm the head of consulting and cybersecurity modeling at Spark Systems Central Europe. I've been working in this field for over 20 years, focusing on using, building, and facilitating model-based thinking to deliver valuable systems and solutions to our customers. I'm also the author of the C4 model implementation in Enterprise Architect, which has helped countless organizations streamline their architecture documentation. In addition to my work, I'm a speaker and consultant, passionate about sharing my expertise and providing the best possible service to our clients. I'm excited to be here today to walk you through insights and our free of charge solution to enhance your software architecture documentation. Before we dive into the details, let's set the stage for what we'll be exploring today. We'll tackle some of the biggest challenges in software architecture documentation and how it can sometimes feel more like an art than a science. You'll see why documenting software architecture is so tricky. Then I'll introduce you to the C4 model developed by Simon Brown, and we will explore the benefits of using this C4 model approach with Enterprise Architect and Prolaborate. On top and topping it off, I will give you a live presentation of the C4 Model Accelerator so you can see firsthand how it streamlines your software architecture journey. By the end of the session, you will have a new perspective on how to document, communicate your architecture with clarity and precision using our toolchain. So let's do some time travel and let's see what our ancestors did in Egypt. So apparently everyone is familiar with this picture, right? So as you see in this picture, this is probably how it looked like the 4,000 years ago. This is how it looks now. That's great, but the problem is we don't have any evidence, any plans. As we know, the architecture documentation is very important, but this is missing. So obviously, using nowadays technologies, we can measure everything to precise measures, really, and we can reverse engineer the current state of the final product. In this case, is a pyramid. But do we actually know the technology, how were the pyramids built then? Well, we can assume. We can assume there are a lot of theories, the ramp theory, the water shaft theory, or, some people say there was the aliens. Some people say that the Egyptians had a really impressive strength. Well, you can you can ask yourself how probably they build it. Some people say, well, 4,000 years ago, you said that there was a missing the architecture documentation. So some people might ask, but it wasn't really existing any architecture documentation back then. Well, you can see that this is really a real artifact. The oldest architectural plan was introduced even way before the pyramids were building. So yeah, this is not really the right argument. 4,000 years and we are back to the same language, right? So talking about architecture as such, a building architecture, this is a very important aspect because we can see the analogy in software. Thousands of years later, we still do use very similar layouts in order to communicate the architecture. And the point of communicating the architecture lies in sharing a different architectural views with different audience. So let me give you an example of this architectural drawing. So when you see that, unless you are a civil engineer, is it really what you want to see? Or are you rather confused like myself? Well, the problem is you are most likely not the intended audience. The intended audience are the readers or the engineers who are able to read it. That's like a software. If you show software code to your manager, I mean the manager of managers, then most likely the manager would say, well, too much details, I can't get my head around. The trouble is that this engineering drawing is intended to be read by these two guys, such as the construction manager or the builder himself. The customer, like myself, the customer who is the buyer, the house buyer, is confused. He or she wants to see something like this, something tangible, something coming out of his or her world, like he or she can imagine how the final product will look like. If you ask someone in construction to show a building's architecture, they'll give you detailed plans. Detailed plans depending on an architecture, and the plans are somehow related to each other, right? So they share a different purpose. For instance, this purpose, the layout, is clearly communicating the size of the rooms and answering question, is all the stuff that I have gonna fit in there or not? Okay. But if you ask a software developer or architect to do the same for software architecture, you might get confusing and inconsistent diagrams. Trust me, I've been working in the field for a long time, and this is really the truth. Architects really struggle to communicate. Someone might say there is no standard. Well, guess what? There is a standard on how to describe the architecture. The standard is the ISO 42010, which covers exactly the concepts of stakeholders, concerns. Stakeholder has a concern. Concern is framed by architecture framework, which is consists of specific model kinds. Model kind is the concrete modeling language, which is depicting the concrete architecture viewpoint. And then you use the language to express the concrete architectural view of a concrete system. Okay? So the argumentation that there is no standard on how to document the architecture is also false. Some architects think that describing a software architecture is just about slapping a big box labeled the Enterprise Service Bus on a PowerPoint slide that it'll do. Well, yeah, apparently that's a thing, yeah. So good luck with decoding this kind of software architecture, because there are questions like, if people don't share the same notation or don't follow any standard, the standard can be even something not official standard, but at least some let's say notation agreed within a team or within an organization, some domain specific language, then there are questions raised like, what is this shape, symbol? What is this meaning? Does the color really matter? Okay. And where do I start? What diagram should I start as a first? Well, to give you a clue a little bit and getting closer to the C4 model, the well-defined structure is when you can see the solution from multiple levels of abstraction. Okay. I've seen a lot of approaches where people talking about software architects tend to put everything on one diagram. And that's a big mess. That's a big mess, and that's usually a beginner's fault. They start with putting everything connected to everything, and then eventually not even the author is able to decode the architecture himself. So technically, you should have a different architectural levels, right? You start usually with the bird's eye view, if you will, holistic view of the system, which clearly discovers the context and clearly defines the boundary of your system. Then you drill down by decomposing the big black box into something called logical containers. You can call it whatever you want, but in this case, it's logical containers. Let's call it that way. And then you drill down, you decompose each of the container into something called components in order to satisfy important user stories or features given by the customer or client. Well, I already mentioned that notation is very important. It's very important preventing the questions raised, preventing to or helping you to decode the architecture, and traceability. So let me just show you the idea behind. So top level, when you start creating the system, you start with a very high level of abstraction, and then you decompose each of the elements. Well, it also really depends how far you want to go and what is important to be decomposed. Keep that in mind. And the lower you go, the more details you will provide. So that's a basic concept which has been around for decades. Okay. So that was the architecture structure. There is something more to architecture description, and the more is that you need to understand the technology decisions. Some people just draw boxes, not even touching to each other, not even mentioning any technology, how these two blocks will communicate to each other through each protocol, or what technology this is going to be developed with. Okay, so also major technology decisions ideally assigned to the concrete building blocks, and also the implementation strategy in order to, and that's one of the goals of architecture, if you do it right, then you can visualize the structure of the code. Sometimes you can even code then there is the line, right? Grady Booth says, well, it's really a matter of time, and time is money. So there is the line dividing the architecture and design. Well, it really depends. I wouldn't be a consultant to not to use the phrase. It depends, really. But yeah, this is very, very important. You can really visualize the structure. You can see the main building, the critical building blocks. Okay. So the remaining question is, why should you care about software architecture? When I ask people during my trainings, consultancy or whatever, my clients, why do you actually want to create a documentation? They usually say, well, we want to create a software architecture for the sake of documenting, just to communicate something. Well, that's not the only reason why, because you can also use it for learning purposes to facilitate onboarding newbies to the team, and so on and so forth. Keep in mind, again, a different audience. The architecture doesn't serve only to the developers. There are other stakeholders, such product owners, project managers, okay? There are also non-technical people out there. And ideally, when the software architecture is somehow connected to the code, this is really a fantastic tool for architectural improvement. You know the term spaghetti code, right? And or big ball of mud. So that's the situation. That's pretty much a wrap up where current software architecture description is right now, unfortunately. How to get out of that? There are a lot of approaches out there. There are a lot of standards out there. And during this session, we'll focus on approach, which is called the C4. Uh, Now let's have a look at the purpose of the C4 model. So the C4 model breaks down complex software systems into 4 levels of abstractions. That's why C4. The first is the container diagram, which provides a high-level view of the system and its interaction with external entities. The next level, containers, is a container diagram where we zoom in to see major containers like web servers and databases, capturing the overall shape of the architecture and technology choices. So at this point, you should already know what technology will be used for what part of the system. Still, high level of abstraction, but you already make your architectural decision. The third level, components, is represented by a component diagram, which helps us understand key components and their responsibilities. And finally, this is optional, finally the code diagram, often represented as a UML class diagram. The purpose is to dig into the internal structure of these components. So here is a very nice illustration. It's sort of like Simon Brown usually says, it's like browsing through the map, zooming out, zooming in through your software architecture. So that's the way how a C4 model works. It starts with the big picture way of drawing a software architecture, and the concept is based that it shows how software architects and developers think about the system being built. So you start usually with the context, then you decompose the context into the internal containers, and then you still keep the containers traced with the external entities. And then you use the same method of decomposition and keeping track with the external entities as you go down to the lower levels of abstractions, okay? The small number of concepts and types of diagrams, that's what it makes, the C4 model makes easy to understand and use. And in my humble opinion, that's the reason why people love a C4 model, including myself. I'm a big fan, by the way. Okay, so what are the benefits of a C4 as such? C4 has a bunch of benefits. First, it makes things clearer by breaking down complex architectures into simpler parts, which helps everyone understand the system better. So it really decomposes the complexity into simpler blocks. Second, it gives us a standard way to work that cuts down on confusion and keeps everything consistent. Third, we can adjust the level of detail based on who we are talking to, from quick overviews to in-depth explanations. Lastly, and this is the most I would say the most logical thing why it is implemented in Enterprise Architect, the C4 model works smoothly with UML diagrams, making it super flexible for explaining system behavior and deployment scenarios. So yeah, that's the point. So now you can guess the motivation behind why we as Spark Systems decided to implement such a C4 in Enterprise Architect. And not only that, we also made it available. We created a dashboard, predefined dashboard in Prolaborate. This slide shows you if you want to know more about C4. There is a book available done by Simon Brown. So this is, let me say, this is the theory how you will use, or how you can describe, how you will grasp the idea of C4 model. And this is the tooling, okay? Enterprise Architect and Prolaborate, and it all equals in something which is called C4 Model Accelerator. So the C4 Model Accelerator was made to help organizations create their software architecture using the C4 model in Enterprise Architect. Enterprise Architect is for modelers. So that's used by creators, and then Prolaborate is used for readers, explorers, more for sharing the information which was created by the creators using EA. The C4 model makes it easier to document and talk about software architecture, so it facilitates the walks through your system and the idea how the system is going to operate. With this accelerator, our aim is to make things clearer, improve communication between teams, and create robust architecture documentation. This is obviously done by the implementation of Enterprise Architect and using the built-in features for documentation. Moreover, in a Q4, if you look at a Prolaborate roadmap, there also will be some possibility to generate documentation directly out of Prolaborate. So this is also very exciting news. If you didn't know that, you have something to look for. And lastly, this framework is super important for getting developers, architects, and non-technical stakeholders to be on the same page, getting them on the same page. On the same page of the same book, sitting on the same shelf, right? Okay. Simon Brown has introduced five levels of diagramming maturity model. Enterprise Architect and similar modeling tools make the C4 model even better by allowing collaboration, traceability, and integration. EA helps architects and stakeholders see system architecture more clearly, which makes decision-making and communication better. Organizations can create advanced architecture models that show real-world interactions and deployment environments, helping them reach C4 level 5 maturity in software architecture documentation and communication. Okay, so this is it. It looks very similar to CMMI, just my comment, but I think we all been there. You usually start with the initial, so there is no software, there is just the code. Then after a couple of releases and change requirements, you realize you need to get somehow organized and to focus on documenting your architecture, right? Okay, so how is the C4 model implemented in Enterprise Architect? EA makes it easy to use by offering custom diagram types for each level, each C4 level. So these diagram types are focusing on the structural diagrams, which are the core diagrams of a C4 model. There are more supplementary diagrams introduced by the C4 model, by the way, describing the dynamics and potentially deployment and so on and so forth. And these diagrams come with toolboxes to make sure that you're using the elements correctly and maintaining consistency across models. So this is how it is implemented in Enterprise Architect. For those who, I suppose everyone is already, everyone in the session is a user of Enterprise Architect, so this is obviously implemented by something called MDG technology, this C4 model in Enterprise Architect. So what you see here, this toolbox, this is related to a container. So this container diagram has this dedicated toolbox, and the other 4 diagrams also have dedicated. What's the benefit of having that everything in Enterprise Architect? Well, the benefit is that it also works smoothly with other modeling languages like UML, Archimate, and BPMN. So you can really expand your models and create different views for fuller representation of the system and its relation to other modeling domains. So I can tell you we have had a customer who really envision to incorporate a C4 model into their enterprise architecture model, so which was really, really cool. And EA gives you the opportunity because you can really use EA. EA is cross-domain tool where you can really have several. EA supports over 80 modeling languages and frameworks. So you can get the idea how you can really expand your C4 model, talking to your colleagues from the other department. Also, there is a feature related to documentation. So it extends the documentation capabilities, enabling cross-referencing with various standards, ensuring alignment across perspectives. And not to forget about traceability, because traceability is very important aspect. And EA is very good at it. And with strong traceability features, EA links elements and diagrams, improving collaboration among team members. Plus, it bridges the gap between technical and non-technical stakeholders by providing a shared modeling language to keep everyone on the same page. So once you have it introduced as the modeling language using the MDG technology, then you share the standardized way how to depict your architecture across the team or across the whole organization of yours. Here are just some examples. As I already referred to at the beginning of my session, I will show you real demonstration how it is implemented in Enterprise Architect. So we will create some of the diagrams. Here is just some example of already predefined diagrams in Enterprise Architect using the C4 extension. Okay, so you can get the idea. So that was C4 model implementation in EA. What about Prolaborate? So Prolaborate makes it even more easier for everyone to understand complex system details by presenting the architectural data in contextual way. So I think you can get the idea that Prolaborate is mining the data, is treating the repository created by Enterprise Architect in a different way, that you can create custom-made dashboards which are showing, which by using concrete dedicated charts are helping you to explore even more information what is sometimes hard to get out of Enterprise Architect. So Prolaborate, keep in mind, Prolaborate is more like a collaboration platform. Okay, so it simplifies even the most things by allowing you to use a feature for review. So there is a very nice process review when you can ask your colleagues who don't even have Enterprise Architect installed but have something to do with decision about technology choices and so on and so forth. Then you can really share just a review which consists of a concrete elements of your architecture, following the due date, and just say, some description. Please provide feedback to these elements by blah blah blah, and then the feedbacks are tracked within Prolaborate, and in fact you can even see it in Enterprise Architect because these two tools are seamlessly integrated. So the idea is to help you to hierarchically visualize the system, to see the system structure and dependencies in order to help understand the relationships between technologies and, for instance, protocols. So this is also what we created for you. This is a little bit differs to the Prolaborate common use for enterprise architecture management. For instance, we have more accelerators out there, by the way, and this is more really focusing on technology. You can, as you will see, you can even explore based on concrete protocols and communication ways. So some examples. this is how the dashboard, the predefined dashboard, which also comes with the comes with the C4 Model Accelerator, looks like. So there are some features of Prolaborate which really gives you some information like for instance, what's the ratio between application services and storages of type of container elements in your system, and so on and so forth. So you can also filter out, you can decompose the system, you can filter out by technologies using the legend, and way much more cool things to explore. This brings me, so we have time-wise, we are very good. We have 27 minutes to go to explore some cool stuff. Finally, to show you how it looks for real. Stop talking and showing more. So I will just stop sharing for a sec to switch my my screen. Okay, here we are. Currently, we have, as I said, we have more accelerators out there, and the C4 model is a new, it's a really fresh new accelerator, new addition to the portfolio of the currently existing accelerators. And here on that page, by the way, the link was part of the presentation which we will provide after the session. And what you will see on this page is just the motivation, the purpose of the C4 model, together with the examples of the diagrams, motivation. So just very overview of what I said during the presentation. And now let's jump to Enterprise Architect. So as a part of the C4 accelerator, C4 Model Accelerator, you will get an MDG technology. The MDG technology, we are still debating how to deploy it. It will be either provided as an XML file to enable that by yourself, or to use the new capability of EA17. What you could hear about that during the keynote done by our Tom. So Tom O'Reilly, and this in EA17 it allows you to have the MDG technology as a part of the model distribution. So we still have to think about that, and yeah, this is something what we need to what we still need to work on. But right now I will just show you how eventually it will look like. I have a whole bunch of MDG technologies out there. So this is how it looks like, C4 Model Accelerator. Once it's enabled, I will not go through the process how this is enabled, because most of you already know that. And I will start with how you can really explore what is possible to do by using the C4 model implementation in EA. So for that, what I will do, I will use the opportunity to create or use the predefined model pattern, which also comes with the MDG technology. The model pattern has already the example of a system which is called financial risk system available in there. There is also some documentation describing the point, the purpose of the diagram, what you can see there, and what it describes. So I will create the model, I will import the model, and let us explore that. Okay, So here you have, I would say, a hint how you can organize your model structure using the C4 model approach. Very important remark, C4 model has no standards on semantics, okay? So it just explains 4 levels of structural architecture for core diagrams, the meaning, the purpose, but it doesn't really give you or restrict you to you know, when it comes to semantics, that the person must always look like that, and that the relationship types are 3 types. No, it just clearly says by definition it's really vague, and it's open to the implementation specifics. So we usually say that we got the C4 model implementation in Enterprise Architect, which is inspired by the C4 model. Okay, so that's why you see the 3 type of relationships what we believe might come in handy, and you see the person, and then you see system under design and a system. So what you're looking at right now, this is a system context in which explains the system in a context manner, models it as a black box, the internet banking system and related entities such as email system, some person which is called personal banking customer, and some mainframe banking system. Okay. Here in the example, what you also see, we used this diagram legend feature, which is obviously out of the C4 model, but we just give you a hint how this can be used, you know, for instance, to differentiate existing system to the system to be system. Okay, you can apply the color codes respectively based on a filter, based on, in my case, it's a filter based on a keyword, and so on and so forth. So this is just a regular feature. By double clicking, this is also using the concept of, that's called composite diagram. By double clicking in Enterprise Architect, you drill into the depths of other diagrams underneath. In this case, it is a container diagram. And then the container diagram, of course, you can also use this feature like a preview. So it drills down up to the UML diagram. So this is the model example. It's we don't have time to really explore it further, but once you get the MDG technology, then you can do it on your own. What is more interesting, I believe, to you is how to start and how the C4 model facilitates the modeling using the C4 approach in Enterprise Architect. So for that, I will really quickly create a new package. And a new package, I will just call, this is my system. And underneath the package, what I will do, I will say, okay, I want to create a new package. And here comes the C4. So here I will just filter out the C4, and I will start with the C4 context diagram, because that's what the approach says. First, you start with the system context diagram. Now, what you see as a first is an empty diagram, where the first thing what you do, usually you place a big box which represents your system under design. So this is my system, my system. Then what you're supposed to do, you just identify the external entities somehow talking to the system. What I didn't pay attention or didn't stop when it appeared, there is a facilitation in a way that when I, in some cases, of some elements, it pops up this menu, which prompts you what type of the element you want to do. In this case, it's just a software or other. But in case, for instance, of a container, there are predefined types like a service, service, database, and an application. Okay, so of course you can change it afterwards, okay, by just using the property window and changing the value in it. So very quickly you use the relationships, and what it does, this is the facilitation. What it automatically does in EA, as soon as you drop an element, it automatically creates a diagram, a composite diagram or child diagram, if you will, underneath of a specific type. So since we are here at a context level, when I double click, it will automatically open a diagram which is a container. What you see here, this is the structure in the hierarchical structure visible in the browser of Enterprise Architect. So this is, I would say, a cool thing, how you can benefit of very quick or rapid modeling C4 using Enterprise Architect. So that's how you do. The same thing applies to the container. So this is for container, as I already mentioned, 3 types. So I will just say application. In this case, you have a boundary. The boundary can be in Enterprise Architect also for proper modelers, can be tied to the system under design as classificator, right? And then I will build very quickly 3 container of different types. So here is storage, because we need to store the information somewhere. And also we need some, I suppose, we don't need, but usually there is some service. When to define service, or when to model this concrete thing as a service, as an application, or as a database, or as a storage, that is explained in a book, or you go to c4model.com website where there are more information. There is more information related to the method itself. What I wanted to show, the same thing what I already showed you previously. When you create the container, it automatically creates underneath the composition diagram. So it really walks you through the levels of C4. Here you see the toolbox, which is related to the dedicated diagram, right? So then in the toolbox, you see only the components and so on and so forth. So this is the way how C4 is implemented in Enterprise Architect. Now let's switch to the Prolaborate. So once you modeled the system in Enterprise Architect and you have a Prolaborate license, and you have it set it up and you have it up and running, you have the connection between Prolaborate and your model in Enterprise Architect, then you can create and visualize, or well, let me put it another way. You can use this predefined dashboard, which really gives you an idea how this can be, how your model can be explored using Prolaborate facility. So what you see here, I'm using the last version of Prolaborate. Well, not the latest update, but one of the last versions. And in one of the last versions, there were introduced these widgets, which what it can do, it can summarize some high-level information regarding the system. So just an example, for the C4 model, what we did, we summarized the ratio of the containers, what is service related and what is application. And then just to give you some insights. You can also use it, what protocols, what technology is used in your system. So really, you can get the overview of your system at the first hand using Prolaborate. Not only that, as already mentioned during the presentation, you can also use the charts to explore, for instance, like in this case, the external entities. So in the middle, there is a system under design, and here you see the external entities which are somehow interacting with your system. Not only that, I will maximize this diagram because this is quite cool. You also, what you can see, you see the system hierarchy landscape of your system. So at a container level, you can also use the legend to filter the concrete containers by the technology. This is also very cool. You can drill down. You can imagine if you have your system, your managers will definitely love that, that they can play around, they can drill down without any knowledge of EA. And this is really about making the decisions, right? You see what components is using what technology and so on and so forth. So in a similar way, you see the technology and protocol usage. This is quite cool. You can get the idea that you can also this is dynamically created, by the way. This is not really hard-coded SQL query in there, so it really fetches the values of a tagged values used in the model. Perhaps I will come back to this. Is also something what I forgot to mention. You have the opportunity to change the technology / protocol of a concrete relationship. This is something what value added thing to the implementation of a C4 in EA. And in a similar way, we kept it free text, actually, the technology of a concrete container, because to create an enumeration consisting of all possible technologies out there, that would be really, really long list. So we really wanted to keep it open for your technologies, what you're using. So now you know where this information comes from, and to give you an insight what Prolaborate can do, you notice the interaction, but the interaction goes further. When you say, I want to know what elements are communicating using this protocol / or technology / protocol, then you click on it, and you really get a list of elements which are talking to each other using this protocol. I think this is quite cool, and it covers one of the use cases which are very hard to achieve by Enterprise Architect itself. I'm not saying it is not possible, but it's quite hard to do that. Okay, so this is a very interesting report, and also what's very interesting, you can get a list of elements where you see something like the properties of the element on the raw. So each raw is dedicated to a concrete element. So you see the traceability, it depends on, it needed by, it's composed of all those elements. So this is also something what was custom made for this C4 Model Accelerator in Prolaborate. And it goes further. Obviously, when you open an application, you can also see where the element is used. So on which diagram it is used. You can see that mobile application is used, for instance, on this on this deployment diagram. This deployment diagram, to be concrete, this deployment diagram is a mixture of C4 elements, which are really on the top, and the regular UML deployment diagram. And this is what I was talking about. This is the benefit brought to you by using the C4 model implementation in Enterprise Architect. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let me come back to the model. Oh yeah, there is also something which you might find very tempting. One of the features of Prolaborate is impact analyzer view, which allows you to create based on selection of those elements directly from the browser. It allows you to create dependency report, so you can get the idea what depends on what, or in this case, you can see the information flow from which element to what element. And here you can also use a concrete filters to that. And yeah, this is a regular feature of Prolaborate, but used for, obviously can be also used for the C4 model. So that's it for the demonstration of the C4 model implementation in Enterprise Architect and the predefined dashboard. And now let's come back to the presentation. There is not a lot of stuff to show, to be honest, because we have 6 more minutes till the end. So let me use the opportunity to open a Q&A session. I believe I wasn't able to keep track of all the questions asked, but I was told before the session that there were already some people asking about the C4 stuff. And yeah, so I guess there are a lot of questions. So shoot.
And thank you so much for that, Bob. And we do have quite a few questions. And the first one is from Miriam. She has asked, how might C4 modeling coexist with existing Archimate models?
Okay, good question. So the idea, for instance, can be that you have a component introduced by Archimate language, Archimate component, and this component can be represented as a whole system, because component in Archimate might represent a whole system, right? So you can link it to either a diagram starting with a context diagram, or you can link it to an element representing the system under design, or to any other element related, or any other element coming from the C4 model.
Great.
Generally speaking, just to finish this up. Generally speaking, any element which deserves which requires some decomposition, and Archimate doesn't have any elements to do that, you can link to the C4 model.
Great. And then we have Matthias Fritz asking, I'm facing the following situation in my organization. I'm using the C4 model. I try to only draw communication links between elements of the same type, like system to system, a container to container, etc. But when products or project teams do their own model, they very much focus on their applications and draw it down to a very detailed level. On the other hand, they draw applications of other teams only on high level. This results in components communicating to containers or even other systems. There is no problem as they use their own tools, but when we switch to a common architecture model, this will cause problems. Did you experience such a situation, and what your advice be?
Okay, this session is turning into advisory. So let me answer quickly. Yes, yes, this is very typical, and this is one of the hardest thing when it comes to providing advisory, to get everyone on the same board, on the same page within the organization, to use it and treat it and identify the appropriate level of abstraction correctly. Because one thing is, okay, you got the tool, you got the language, but you have to educate the people how to use all these things. And it comes with practice. If you have, I've witnessed that many times, that you have a different teams, and the teams are seeing the context only in their eyes like this, okay, very narrow, and they, it's very hard to convince them that their view is not the only view out there, that they have to somehow link it with the others, and how to link it, and what's the appropriate level of abstraction, and what's the appropriate element type. That's a long journey, really, to educate people, and usually that's that, yeah. So to help you out on that, obviously, that's part of our services, by the way. As Spark Systems Central Europe, as a service provider, we do have some service packages related to tool and infrastructure, and this concrete question would be related to this service: governance, compliance, or modeling insights. So what we would do, we would really uh, go and explore your model and identify potential modeling improvements, and also observe some practices which might lead into pitfalls, and we would help you out to, or suggest some mitigation to that. So this is also part of the story, but to really give you some advice here, obviously we would need more time for that. Sorry, and I would have to see the concrete examples. But thank you for the question, though. Feel free to contact us, and we can discuss it further.
Thank you, Bob. And with that, we have reached the last minute, and we would like to appreciate your perspectives on model-based thinking and its practical applications. And to the audience, we hope you found the information valuable and are excited to implement these insights into your own software projects. And you can always reach out to Spark Systems Central Europe and the relevant team to get the insights. And if you have any remaining questions, please feel free to continue the discussion in our Slack channel. The link is still in the chat window, where Bob and the team will be available to provide further answers. And this is not the end. There are more exciting sessions coming up, so stay tuned for more. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Anup. Thank you. Bye bye.